Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Matt Williams. I'm a tutor in politics and what is known as the Access Fellow here at Jesus College at the University of Oxford. Now we're coming close to the application deadline for Oxford University, and so I'm receiving quite a lot of messages from people asking me, what should I do? What is the one sort of secret to getting into a university like Oxford? What can I do? It's a really interesting question because it acknowledges one crucial fact about applying to universities like Oxford, which is agency, how much capacity individuals have to control their ability to get into a university like Oxford. Another sort of sentiment I'm quite commonly confronted by this close to admissions is the opposite, this idea that actually applicants have very little control over their capacity to succeed in admissions to universities like Oxford or Cambridge or similar. And that comes down to a bit of an assumption about Oxford perhaps being a bit like the sorting hat from Harry Potter, that we are just looking for people who are sort of naturally capable academically, and we're not really that interested in someone's character or the choices they've made or how diligent or hardworking they are. Now, this is a really problematic assumption, and I want to crush it here and now. You know, this idea that you basically have no control. You're either born a certain way or you're not, and it's just luck of the draw. It's all to do with fate and destiny. There's nothing you can do about it. There's actually no positive evidence for a role of genetics in someone's academic ability. There are no genes that have been identified that can be positively sort of attributed to someone's academic ability and potential. So in terms of sort of someone being born naturally as a genius, there's basically nothing for us to go on there. Now, there certainly are some environmental and contextual factors which are very important, usually, sadly, in disrupting someone's education. So things like whether or not somebody has had illness in their life, whether they've had difficult family circumstances, whether they've had their schooling disrupted for various reasons. That has a huge and well-documented impact, and that's something where, you know, individuals do lack agency. It's not their fault, and they do struggle to be competitive at universities like Oxford or Cambridge. But for many others, there's a bit of a sense of, well, there's not a huge amount I can do. I don't need to prepare for those admissions tests. I don't need to practice for Oxbridge interviews because it's just testing my raw talent, my gifts, my abilities. Well, I mean, the good news is, and I do think this is good news, that we're all basically gifted and talented. There's no particular advantage in terms of academic ability yielded to individuals. And if you think about it, that makes kind of obvious sense because the sorts of skills that we test in universities academically are just frankly too new to human history to have evolved into a particular genetic pathway. In other words, there's no particular reason why someone would have, you know, had ancestors who survived better because they had particularly strong maths genes. You know? So it doesn't make a huge amount of sense, and indeed there isn't evidence for it. There is no positive evidence for it. Even sort of people who have autism or savantism, who are exceptionally good at pattern recognition, that's not straightforwardly just genetic. A lot of that is to do with environmental factors and, crucially, choices. And this is where you come in, okay? Because you are empowered in the application process to make certain choices that will improve your chances of admission, okay? Fundamentally, the big secret, if you like, to being admitted to a university like this is grit, determination, stubbornness, diligence, perseverance, sweat, whatever you want to call it, right? You know, the only reason I'm here, for example, is not natural ability, because I haven't got any natural ability. It's just stubbornness. I'm a very, very stubborn person. And, you know, if I don't understand something, I will do whatever it takes to understand it. I will spend the hours just getting used to it. And so when it comes to preparing aspects of the Oxford admissions process, like admissions tests, like interviews, you just got to do the hard yards, right? But people that tend to be successful are the ones that have as much fun doing it as possible. So if you want my advice, you've got to make sure that you plan time to prepare things like admissions tests, things like interviews, but you've got to have as much fun doing it as possible. So you've got to try and frame it in your mind as something enjoyable rather than hard work. So for example, you should be spending literally every day preparing for an admissions test if you have it. And that could be about half an hour a day, so you wouldn't have to do hours upon hours of revision. just half an hour a day. And if you frame it in your mind as a little bit like you're doing, a brain teaser at the end of a difficult day, so it could be like you're doing a word search or a crossword or a Sudoku or something like that, and you actually sort of start to kind of enjoy the puzzles, then you're going to do much better than someone who doesn't prepare because they think there's no need to prepare for the admissions test because they're just testing your raw talent, which I'm afraid is not true, or someone who absolutely hates every second of the preparation because, again, they'll be demotivated and they just won't do enough. Okay? The basic point I'm making is perhaps an obvious one, but it really needs to be clearly emphasized, which is that individuals have a lot more agency, a lot more power over whether or not they are admitted to universities like this. Okay? There are state schools in London, which shall remain nameless, that will ask their students to come in by 6 o'clock in the morning in order to prepare for aspects of Oxbridge admissions. Now that's not necessary. You don't necessarily need to do that many hours of preparation, but it gives a clear example of the sorts of dedication that we encounter. And I'm afraid that is the secret, right? That you just have to be dedicated. And that's good news, really, because it just means that it strips out any notion that there are some people who are born special and others who are born without being special. And that's one of the principal causes of what's called imposter syndrome, this idea that some individuals don't feel like they fit in because they don't feel like they're good enough. Well, that sense of not being good enough often comes with a sort of tacit assumption about this sort of deficit, this genetic deficit that some people feel they have. And it's something, honestly, I thought I've had for my whole life, because it's quite natural to think, well, some people just seem to find this so easy, it must just be genes. But actually, it's more about environment, which is difficult to control, but then there's a lot to which we can control. There's a lot of choice we can make. And that's good news, because if you make concrete choices, then you can succeed. And if you're not sure what choices to make, then make sure you ask me in the comments, because no one succeeds in getting into universities like Oxford on their own. It just doesn't happen. You need help, and there's absolutely no shame in asking for it. So if you do need help, if you do want some concrete tips on what you specifically could be doing every day in order to improve your chances, then do please let me know. I'm here to help. I want to help. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I hope this has made a bit of sense. Keep in touch in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye now.